Welcome to Missions Life, where we share resources and encouragement for current missionaries, future missionaries, and those praying for missionaries. Missions can be hard, and we want to help you face the challenges of life, leadership, and ministry. We want your life to bear fruit for the gospel wherever you are. I'm Kyle Farrans, here with my co-host and wife, Heather. Welcome to episode 0 of Missions Life. As we launched this podcast, we thought some of you might enjoy the opportunity to get to know us a little bit and also to hear about our missions journey. So in this episode, what we're going to be doing is my wife, Heather, and I are going to be interviewing each other and letting you get to know us. So to jump right into it, Heather, why don't you tell us a little bit about us and our family for them to hear?
Yeah, sure. No problem. So we've been married for almost 24 years, right? Or 24 years this August. We got married in 2000, so it's pretty easy to keep track. We have 3 daughters. Our oldest is married and finishing her last year at Cedarville University in a communications degree. Our middle daughter, Emily, is also at Cedarville University, and she has a dual major in elementary education and special education. And she really loves tutoring and interacting with families with kids that have learning disabilities. That's really special to watch her do that. And our third daughter is an 8th grader, Natalie. She's here with us in Portugal and enjoys Krav Maga and soccer, or football, as we say here. So we have been really excited to start this podcast, right, Kyle? This has been on our radar, so to speak, for a really long time.
8 years, I think.
8 years. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, so we actually started talking about this podcast when we were back in Tanzania, and our first year there, actually. And it had been something that was a really fun idea to be able to look at, just didn't have the capacity or time to be able to lean into that at the time. So we've been continuing to talk about it for the last 8 years and finally got to the point where we were able to get all the ducks in a row to be able to get this thing off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of back when we had first started listening to podcasts, when that kind of came around. I don't know, maybe we were a little slow to the game. They'd probably been around before that, but we had just started listening to podcasts and it started kind of searching for podcasts that spoke into our crazy international life and what things talked about. How do you raise kids overseas? What's it like to transition to a new country? Like different things like that. And we didn't find a lot. And that's what really got us thinking about creating a podcast that just kind of casually talked about missions life.
Yeah.
So one of the first questions, though, that I want to start with is, Kyle, how did you become a missionary?
So going back a little bit before that, my parents were missionaries, and so grew up on the mission field, spent some time in Papua New Guinea with them. And so was just kind of surrounded by missions my whole life, ever since I've been 5 years old. And we had to come back to the States for medical reasons when I was in high school. But during that, in between my junior and senior year of high school, I was able to go back to Papua New Guinea on a missions trip. And it was really on that missions trip that God challenged me, showing me the incredible need for the gospel in places that have so little opportunity to hear the gospel. And what God really challenged me with was that He wanted me to be a part of taking the gospel to those people that have so few opportunities to hear the gospel. And so that really began my missions journey. That was the steps I needed to take and to follow Him in that. So Heather, what about for you? What did God use in your life?
Well, I think I can honestly say I was heading the opposite direction of missions during high school and the beginning of college. I was just really self-absorbed, trying to make a fun and exciting career for my life, what's going to be the best for me. It wasn't until I had gone on a mission trip after my sophomore year of college that I got to see missions in a completely different way. I saw missions and all the creative things that happened on the field. I saw missionaries trying a bunch of different things to spread the gospel and to reach people. And that really struck me. I didn't know how I actually fit into missions, but it was at that time that I really felt God pressing into my heart the idea that if I would just follow him, if I would just give him all those heart's desires and let him take me wherever, I mean, what else could be more exciting than letting the God of the universe direct your every step? So I came back from Mexico. I call it my mountaintop experience because we were literally on the mountaintop and really completely changed directions. Transferred from Michigan State University studying social work down to Cedarville University to get my nursing degree, and really knew that God could take me anywhere and do anything. I didn't really have like a country picked out that I wanted to go be a missionary in. I knew that I would have a nursing degree and was hoping that God would use that some way. But I really just wanted to see what doors he would open up. And I can honestly say it's been an exciting ride and gone places I never expected I'd go.
Never a dull moment.
Yeah. So, Kyle, that's a good segue into what has our missionary journey looked like?
Very up and down, that's for sure. Probably one of the first things that happened in our missions journey was that both Heather and I had really felt the Lord leading us into tribal missions even before we met. And so that was made dating really easy because
Exactly.
we both knew we were only going to date someone that God was leading into missions.
It's like the checklist was, do you want to go live out in the jungle? Do you not mind, no electricity? It was a pretty big checklist.
Yes. So yeah, God brought us together. We got married, and we were planning to go into tribal missions, and we had both actually heard a radio broadcast separately in our cars. I was at work. Heather was.
I can't remember what
Yeah,
I
I
was
can't
doing.
remember what it was, but it was a radio broadcast on the AIDS pandemic in Africa, and we heard it, talked about it after work that day, and said, "Hey, you know what? We should be praying that God would send some people to go
But not
minister."
us.
Because we were going into tribal missions. So we were
Exactly.
already committed and called and going. And so we began praying that God would be raising up people to share the gospel with these HIV and AIDS patients that were so close to death and were going to be facing eternity before their maker in a very, very short period of time with so many people dying. And a month or two later, I think it was, that we talked about it again and realized that God had really been working on both of our hearts separately to be leading us into looking into that type of ministry. And so we began looking into different mission agencies that had HIV and AIDS ministry. At that time, no one really did. And so we just began calling around and trying to find ones that did, and got to ABWE, and they said, "Well, no, we don't, but we'd like to start one. Would you want to help start one?" So that kind of led us to be able to join with ABWE and to be heading towards South Africa. And I think one of the things that excited us the most about HIV/AIDS ministry was just the idea that as God works, He's doing it to show His glory. And as we went to one of the darkest places, spiritually speaking, and with just so much pain and death, that was an opportunity, just like a jeweler will set a diamond on a black cloth to show the brilliance of that diamond. God puts His glory in really dark places and lets His glory shine forth from that. And so that was our joy, to be able to take His glory to a really, really dark place, to let God's glory be seen through that.
Yeah, so we took off in February 2007 and landed in Durban, South Africa with two little girls at the time. Emily was 2, almost 3, and Abby was 4. Is that right? Yeah, so little girls, young family. And we plopped down in Durban and started learning the culture, which there's a lot of different cultures in South Africa. So that was an interesting journey. And then working on learning the language of Zulu.
Yes. So that took us the better part of 3.5 years, I think. So it was learning all the pops and clicks and all of the things like that. Our mouths hurt the first few months that we were starting that, and but once we were able to get Zulu under our belts. We
Kind of.
kind of we got there. One of the things that we really wanted to do was to be working to start a ministry to these HIV and AIDS patients and eventually start a care home. So, Heather, why don't you tell us a little bit about that process there of doing that?
Yeah, so we eventually moved up to Richards Bay, to be kind of closer to the center of the AIDS pandemic, and worked with a local church there. Um, what we ended up doing was coming alongside, partnering with the local hospice agency. Started going to their different support groups, just kind of getting to know people, learning the culture in a different way, and then eventually started taking steps to open a little 4-bed care home right on our church property, where the hospice agency would refer patients to us that weren't receiving the care that they needed at home or the hospitals had turned away. And we would bring them into this little facility and care for them, work on nutrition, get their medications all straightened around, give them a safe place just to sleep. Um, there was a lot of violence out in the township neighborhoods. And so women would come to us just exhausted from trying to stay safe and would sleep for days. But we had the opportunity to share with them the gospel. Our caregivers would do, and Kyle would do Bible studies with the patients. Anybody who wanted to would come over to the church services. And it was an absolute joy to come alongside people sometimes at a very dark time in their life and just love on them first, show them the gospel through our love, and be able to share God's life-giving words. Um, we eventually closed down the care home when South Africa was able to get enough ARV medications out to the people. Different jobs started providing medical care even at like a job site. And so the country really turned around in the AIDS pandemic, and the facility wasn't really needed. So we closed that down. And then Kyle transitioned into some pastoral training.
Yes, and that was definitely a big learning experience as we were closing down the care home. Anytime you close down something, it it tests you, it challenges you. So that was a big stretching point for us as we went through that. But even before that transition, that God closed that down, we had noticed the need for Zulu pastors to get some training. And we actually, again, started praying that God would be raising up someone to be working on that. Seeing a pattern here, maybe. But one of the pastors in the area, one of the Zulu pastors in the area, had started going through some Bible teaching, and one of his congregation members came up to him and started asking him and asked him, "Pastor, why are you preaching from the Bible now?" And the pastors in the Zulu areas, they were pastors because they were charismatic. They could get a crowd of people.
Or they inherited the church.
Exactly, or they inherited the church. So most of them did not have any Bible training at all, and didn't know how to be able to teach from the Bible. And so, hearing stories like that really made us realize the incredible need for that. And uh, kind of a mental picture that came to mind through that time was that God really wanted me to not be the flagship, but to be a submarine. And a submarine can be able to support a whole host of flagships. And our role was to be able to kind of go below the surface and be able to assist and support these Zulu pastors. And we worked with about 10 Zulu pastors, helping give some Bible training to them. And by pouring into the lives of these pastors, even though we couldn't plant 10 churches, we could be a part of the 10 churches that they were a part of. And that was so exciting to be able to do that. And during that time, I was also working as the team leader for the Durban team, and working with the missionaries there. And this gave our family just a real joy and opportunity to be able to build into the lives of other missionaries. And we absolutely loved doing that. Our girls loved doing it. And we had really just been enjoying that, and just been looking for more and more opportunities to be able to do that more.
We really saw how important it was to support and encourage and cheerlead the other missionaries that were around us. It was exciting to see people working in their gifting and really thriving in their ministry. It was also a joy to come alongside when people were struggling and to be able to be a help or a sounding board or find resources. So, what was interesting was we were getting ready to talk to our Africa director about the potential of helping support other missionaries in Africa, and pitching that idea and seeing if there was a need. When he first came to us and asked,
If we would consider taking the regional director role for East Africa. And so that'd be moving from South Africa, moving up to Tanzania, being based there and overseeing the countries of South Sudan, Ethiopia, Uganda, Tanzania, and potentially Kenya as well. And so we started praying about that. We prayed about it for a long time. That was a very difficult decision, probably one of the hardest decisions we've had to make. I think it was harder to make that decision than it was to go to South Africa because we'd really come to love South Africa. We loved the ministry there. We loved our friends, and I just saw a real. It was just a real joy for us to be there, and so it was a difficult decision to make. But we also saw that God had been gifting us and giving us the desire to be ministering to missionaries in this way and to see missionaries thriving in their ministries. And so this is an opportunity to be able to expand the impact of that. And so I think it was in 2015 we left South Africa and transitioned up to Tanzania to start our role there as the regional director.
that was a very big adjustment for our family. Uh, the two cultures, the two countries are very different. The availability of things is very different. The kids were sad to leave family, but God continually surprised us, and my kids found joy and laughter even in the midst of our electricity going off 8, 10, 12 times a day, or the water tank running dry, or the crazy heat. We just really had a lot of joy in our ministry and our times during Tanzania, and good friends and different activities. We learned to snorkel because we were right on the beach. Had to watch out for all the what do they call the sea urchins that are all pokey and the jellyfish floating by. But it was a new adventure.
Yes, and we didn't live on the beach. We could just see the beach over our squatter camp and junkyard that was in front of
You're
our
right.
house. I think one of the things though that was really important for us in that new role, the regional director role, was just the opportunity to do three key things, and that was just to lead, to develop, and to care. And that's really been our focus as we work with missionaries is to do those three things of lead, develop, and care. And we're really trying to do that as much as we can. So we were there in Tanzania for 3 years, and then some things changed there, and God opened up some other opportunities. So Heather, you want to talk about transitioning up here to Portugal?
Yeah, so after being in Tanzania for 3 years, we took the regional director role in Western Europe. That was a huge culture shift going from Tanzania to Portugal. Um, it was that one was kind of rough on our family. One of our daughters would wake up in the morning and have tears in her eyes and say, "There are just no birds singing outside my window." Now, granted, while we were in Africa, we were usually complaining about the birds and how noisy they were and how much they woke us up. But when we left that, there were so many big things that were a part of our life that we really missed. It was a lot colder, completely different foods. We had to make all new friends, find new things that we enjoyed. It was just a very big transition for our family that I think put a lot of stress on our family for a while. But we jumped right into traveling around to visit the different missionary fields and the different teams. And our girls came along with us, and we made new friends, and we started eating way too many pastries, and really just looked for the ways that God was opening doors for us to minister and looking for the gifts he was giving our family, even in the midst of being very sad after leaving Africa.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely been a big transition. I think we've kind of noticed that it takes our family about 18 months to transition to a new country every time we've done it. You'd think it'd get faster, but there are some carryover principles, but it does take a while as you redefine yourself as a family. So I think one of the things that we've enjoyed about the role of regional director is that day in and day out, it looks really different. Some days we're doing a lot of emails, um, doing interviews with potential missionaries. I do a lot of coaching and mentoring calls with missionaries and leaders. We'll visit our missionaries, we'll travel to them. And the goal in all of that is to be building healthy missionaries and teams to see the gospel spread here in Western Europe. And our region here that we work with, we have missionaries in Ireland, in England, Scotland, France, Germany, Portugal, Spain, and Italy. And so it's been a real joy to minister to them. There's about 90 missionaries or so that we work with. And this has been a real pleasure for us to be able to get to know them and to do whatever we can to serve them. The more we can do to help missionaries stay on the field, it allows the ministry of the gospel to continue to go forward. It takes a long time for missionaries to get here. And so anything we can do to help them stay really allows that gospel to continue to spread quickly.
Absolutely. So, coming full circle back around to talk about this new podcast,
Yes.
what are some of the topics that you're excited to explore on this podcast?
So a few of the topics I'm looking forward to. First one would be leadership in ministry. And that would really just be unpacking character, leadership competencies, capacity, and courage. Just looking at how those things play out in ministry. Another one would just be resources. What are some helpful resources that have helped us and will help others to equip them to be able to minister well? And then probably the third one would be encouragement, and just what is God using to encourage us that gives us the strength to press on as we do that. Now, Heather, what about for you? What are some topics that excite you as we look forward to getting started?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. There are so many topics that I'm excited about, but let me just name a few. So, right off the bat, MKs, talking about our missionary kids and the things we can learn um, to help equip them to live in different cultures, what it's like to transition back to the States, even this topic of helping MKs grieve the losses, just exploring different ways we can be a resource for our MKs. Also, another topic, the idea of health on the mission field, not just physical health, but our emotional health, spiritual health, relational health. Um, Bringing in some experts in those areas to talk about, just staying healthy on the field. Also, I'm really hoping that the different guests that we have on the show also help our churches and supporters back home get a better picture of what life is like on the mission field, and how they can be praying for their missionaries, ways they can be supporting them relationally. Sometimes we feel really far away from our supporters in America and our sending churches. And so maybe some of the topics on the podcast would be helpful for them.
Excellent. Well, at the end of the different podcasts, as we are interviewing people, we're going to be asking them a few interesting, fun questions to be able to kind of close out the podcast. And so we were just going to ask each other some of these questions also. So Heather, what is something you've recently read or listened to that you've enjoyed or found helpful?
Yeah. So I'm doing a book study with another missionary wife when we are actually traveling, when we're not traveling and we're in our countries at the same time. But we're going through the three books that Nancy DeMoss Wagamuth wrote, The Brokenness, Surrender, and Holiness. And I am really enjoying this book series and just the truths and the reminder of our heart posture, like what our heart posture should be before the Lord. It's been very convicting also. But what about you, Kyle? What are some books you're reading or things you're listening to?
So one book that I recently went through that was extremely helpful is called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect by John Maxwell. And this has been extremely powerful for me just to be helping think through how I can be focusing on others in communication, whether it's written or spoken. It's not about me; it's about others. And so this has really helped me to be intentional in putting others first in everything I do and add value to their lives. And so that's really what we want to be doing here on this podcast. It's not about us, even though we are talking about ourselves today. We really want this to be able to share things that are going to be helpful to you in your life. And this book was probably so helpful that actually, this is really rare for me to do, but right when I finished it, I started reading it again a second time to be able to really glean as much as I could out of that. So, been very helpful. So, another question though for you, Heather, what's a resource, tool, app, or life hack that you found helpful?
Okay. So, a problem that I have is that when I travel around the world or head back to America, I can't bring recipe books with me. I can't even bring like a stack of printed off recipes. And so my family gifted me the app called Recipe Keeper, and I can import um, website recipes. I can snap pictures of my recipes. I can be in someone else's home, have ate something very yummy, ask for the recipe, and capture it right there in my recipe keeper. So now, everywhere we travel, we can be staying in a random Airbnb in Ireland, and I still have my recipes with me. So that's been a game changer for cooking. All right, Kyle, what about you? Life hack, app, tool, resource?
I think one that's been the most helpful in the past couple of years has been Schedule Once, which is a scheduling app. So if it just allows me to be able to set up my calendar and share a link to people instead of doing back and forth emails and trying to remember which time zone I'm in or which time zone someone else is in, and getting confused in that. No more of that. I just set the calendar and send people a link, and it automatically adds it to my calendar, sends them a reminder, sends me a reminder, adds the Zoom link on there, and just been a huge help. So when I'm traveling, even with our team leaders, I'll send out a link to set up a meeting with them, and I'll get on an airplane, and by the time the plane lands, all my meetings are booked, and so it has saved a ton of back and forth emails.
And this has de-stressed my life because there's no more, oh my goodness, I've got a meeting in 5 minutes that I forgot about or I put in the wrong time zone. So this really is a game changer for the wife too.
It is. It took a little bit of time to get set up at first, but yeah, Schedule Once. I think sometimes if it's pulled up as Once Hub when you Google it, but it has been a game changer for me. So just some if you'd like to get to find out more about our ministry, you can go to kylefarran.com, and that's KYLEFARRAN.com, and have some different resources on there, some different leadership resources, a bit more about our ministry, and different ways you could get involved, find out about what's going on here in Western Europe. And we really just are thankful for the opportunity to serve the Lord in missions, and pray and hope that God uses this to be an encouragement to you in your journey, or as you get to understand missions better so that you can be able to pray and support the missionaries that you are a part of.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed episode 0. If this was a blessing to you, please share it with others.